has often been said that God writes straight with crooked lines. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but it's a great summation of the way God functions sometimes in our world and in our lives. God writes straight with crooked lines. Now, this is not an acceptance or an allowance for crookedness in our lives, right? We're not allowed to be sinful, right? But rather it acknowledges that God is still sovereign over all things, all peoples, all times. No matter what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, God is still sovereign, and he can and will use the good and the bad to affect his saving grace and his plan in our lives, so that, as we said in the song, eventually all nations will give the Lord glory and honor. That's what he's working towards. That's the end state that God is working towards. Our readings today show how God has used the unlikely and sometimes unlikely people and situations in bringing his people to salvation. And we see it in our own lives as well. In our first reading, Isaiah has been warning the people of Israel, right? There was a civil war in Israel, and remember the 12 tribes? Well, it had split 10 tribes versus 2 tribes. Those 2 tribes must have been pretty powerful. But 10 versus 2, and the 2 held them off. So the country was split, and the Assyrians had come in and destroyed the northern kingdom and taken the 10 tribes and just disseminated it, right? The southern kingdom was preserved only by an act of God. And so Isaiah is reminding the southern kingdom, listen, God spared you once. He's not going to do it again. Unless you get your act together, you're done. Because the Babylonians are coming. Forget the Assyrians. The Babylonians are coming, and they will reduce your city and your temple to rubble and send you off into exile. And so, in the midst of his prophecies, though, God gives a prophetic word to Isaiah for those who are doing right, for those who are trying to bring the city and the country back to God. And he gives them a word of hope. He says to them, listen, Babylon's coming. You're going to get destroyed. You're going to get sent into exile. But then the Lord's going to send this guy named Cyrus. In fact, he calls him his anointed. The word in Hebrew is Meshiach, or Messiah. The Lord's going to send a Messiah named Cyrus to bring you back. He goes, and Cyrus won't even know me. Because here's the kicker. Cyrus is not a Jewish name. And so the people had to be wondering, really? Some dude named Cyrus is going to come and save us? He's not even Jewish? And the Lord says twice in this prophecy, though you knew me not. And he's talking to Cyrus. So 150 years after this prophecy, after Babylon has come and destroyed the southern kingdom, leveled the walls and the temple, and nothing's left to Jerusalem, and they've taken everybody off in exile, the Persians have this king named Cyrus. And the Persians come and attack Babylon and defeat them. And when they do, King Cyrus says to the Israelites, you can go back. And I will send you military protection because your city has no walls. I will give you political support, and I will give you finances to go and rebuild your walls and your temple. Go. A very unlikely source, non-Jewish, pagan, Gentile, sometimes an unlikely character, or unlikable character, and yet God uses him to bring Israel back. Then we look at our gospel, and And we have the Pharisees and the Herodians, and we have Jesus, and we have Caesar, and what's going on? Right? Here's the real interesting background to this story. There's a few pieces. First of all, the Pharisees were supposed to be leading the people of God in worship and in pursuit of God. Not worship, that was the priests. But the Pharisees were supposed to be leading the people in pursuit of God and in recognition of His sovereignty over their lives. But instead, they had kind of taken over. They had made themselves and their control and their power and their position the pursuit of their lives instead of God's glory. And so here they were leading the people of Israel, kind of inserting themselves into God's space. The Herodians were Jewish people who had aligned themselves with Rome in a clever way to try to secure power and control for themselves by aligning themselves with King Herod, who was a puppet of Rome. Right? So they were kind of taking the political route to snag power over Israel. These two groups hated each other. They hated each other. Imagine if, like, Pelosi and McConnell got together to work on something. It would blow our minds, right? So here you have the Pharisees who send their disciples to him with the Herodians. Jesus is like, something's up, man. If these two are working together, right? So they come to him. He's sitting in the temple. That's an important fact, right? He's sitting in the temple. They come to him with this question: is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not? Right? Now, it's a perfect trap question because the Pharisees realize if he says yes, then the Pharisees can call him out and say he's not the Messiah. Because if you remember, Caesar had claimed to be divine. Right? By this time in Roman history, Caesar had claimed to be divine. And so the Messiah would never encourage the people of Israel to give tribute to an idol, to another god, right? And so they knew that they could strip him of all of his momentum, of all of his support, if he says, yes, pay the tax. If he says, no, don't pay the tax, then the Herodians can go to the Roman leaders and say, he's an insurrectionist. He's causing problems. He's telling people not to pay the tax to Rome. And then the Romans would come in and settle his hash in their own way at that time, right? So it's just either way, Jesus loses. Okay? So they come with this question. Well, he's sitting there in the temple, so he says, tell me, do you have one of those coins that you pay the tax with? Now, if you remember, Jesus overturned the table of the money changers, right? When he goes into Jerusalem the last time, he cleans the temple and he throws over the table of the money changers. What was the deal with the money changers? Well, the money changers were there because you didn't want to bring Roman coins into the temple. Because Roman coins had an engraving of Caesar on them who claimed to be divine, so you would be bringing an idol into the temple, thus defiling it. So you would change your money out for Jewish money so that you never were bringing an idol into the temple. And so Jesus says, you got one of those coins? Oh, yeah. He's already called them out. He's already busted them. First of all, they're trying to say, well, we really shouldn't be giving tax to Caesar, should we? And yet they're carrying his coins in their pockets. Secondly, they're in the temple. They've carried an idol into the temple, right? So he's already called them out on 2 points of hypocrisy. And then he takes the coin and he says, oh, whose image is this, right? Who's it? Oh, it's Caesar's? Oh, well then if you're going to play the game, people, if you're going to benefit from the commerce and the economy and the protection and the infrastructure of Rome, then it's only just and fair. You've got to play the game the whole way. Which means give to Caesar what belongs to him. That's what all the justice and laws of the Old Testament were about being fair to people, and that's fair. But then he says, give to God what belongs to God.